Boom shakalaka. And we're recording. All right, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, it is your boy Chris Shule, aka the Esoteric Noetic. That's what I call myself, Chris, aka the Chocolate Nubian Soul Brother. Now we have Chris Edwards in the house, this extraordinary young gentleman, a wisdomatic truth bomber. Look at you, man. Look at your Gandalf-like face, man. I love it. I love it. So I met Chris about a month ago at the March Against Mandatory Vaccines, and this guy was dropping the truth bombs. You may have seen one of the videos that I posted. This guy was telling it as it is. He's all about solutions, all about uniting people, getting everyone to come together to really address what is going on in the world. So I just wanted to spend some time talking to this brilliant lad in regards to everything that's going on in the world. I did check out the USB that you gave me. One of the great things that I love that you did, man, at the protest was you had a whole bunch of USBs that you were handing out to people that were open-minded to what's going on. And I thought that's a great idea because at the moment we're obviously not able to post freely on social media, courtesy of Zuckerberg. But yeah, I checked out the USB, and it's a great avenue of resources, man. And bro, I wanted to delve into some of the topics on that. But bro, if you will, do you want to talk about yourself, what you've been up to, and what you do, your activism? Let's get into it.
Yeah, so to begin with, I think one of the most important things that we all need to think about in this day and age is it doesn't matter what any single organization is doing. So it really doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what some of the legal networks out there that are working on these issues are doing. It doesn't matter what these medical networks that are out there that are working on these issues that are doing. What really matters, I think, is when all of this is said and done, when it's all over and done with, each and every one of us, you, me, everyone, is going to be thinking to themselves, I should have done more. I should have said something more. I should have done more. And I'm going to be thinking it, and you're going to be thinking it, and everyone's going to be thinking it. And when that moment comes when you've got to look at yourself in the mirror, at yourself, how long are you going to spend looking in that mirror? You know, how long are you going to spend thinking about all the things that you could have done? And how much time are you going to spend thinking about all the things that you did do? And that I think is what matters, is what each of us are doing. And there's so many issues happening in the world at the moment, and it's so easy to get caught up in one issue or the other. So the boom shakalakas, as you call them.
Yeah, I try to refer to it
reasons.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. But this is going to be going out in Odyssey library, so we can speak relatively freely. I don't think this is going to be censored. I do want to put a few clips up on YouTube, but back to it, man. Let's address the issue just to give people a heads up, because not everyone that watches this may be up to speed on what's going on unless you've been under a rock. But obviously, we've seen a lot of changes in pretty much every area of society over the last year, not just in terms of law. We're under a state of emergency. I can't think of a time since I've been around that's happened in Australia, but that's happening all around the world. So we not only have a lockdown in our country, but for the first time we have lockdowns pretty much going on all around the world. And of course, we've seen these draconian measures in terms of not just being able to, not just a case of us not being able to leave our homes, but we now are monitored in terms of what we do. I mean, there's an boom shakalaka task force at present that's basically monitoring your communications for if you say anything out of line. And then, of course, we have the issue of the vaccines that are apparently voluntary. And this is the interesting thing, but I think when you look closely at what's going on, you realize that it's not so voluntary, that essentially it's going to reach a point where it's going to be very difficult for you to live your life unless, of course, you are acquiescing to what the government is putting in place. So amidst everything that's going on, you're talking about solutions to address this problem. And granted, you're talking about how you feel as if the one question that's going to be on people's minds is that they haven't done enough. I guess the real question is what's going on? Because a lot of people are in the mindset that they don't understand why you're protesting. I mean, they think this thing is voluntary. If you don't want to take it, that's your business, you know, but stop trying to tell everyone else that they have to take this thing. This is what I've been hearing a lot. And people don't look at this in terms of anything weird that's going on. A lot of people, at least what I'm seeing, are actually quite happy. They think the government's taking care of them. The government that was doing this 2-week lockdown to flatten the curve, a year later is still telling us that we just have to hold in there just a bit longer. So what do you say to people like this? And let's address the real issue here. I mean, what is going on, and why do you see it being an issue as far as people not having done enough? Because a lot of people think they're doing what they should be doing, which is just listening to what the government is telling them to do. Wear a mask.
Well, I think many of these people are suffering from some a range of very serious obstacles and barriers towards understanding healing and growth. Most people don't have time, you know. Most people have got bills, they've got kids, they've got a job, they've got 12 minutes of freaking day to themselves where they can actually breathe, you know. So to ask that person to dedicate energy into really understanding a topic thoroughly, that's a big ask, you know. That's not you're asking them to dedicate a fair amount of energy there.
Yeah. Particularly when it's covering so many levels, not just lore, but science and psychology and so forth.
Right. So you're actually asking for a large investment of energy from them. And why should they invest that energy, right? Mm-hmm. And we've also got, when you look at the traits of people who are in abusive relationships, both of the perpetrator and the victim.
Stockholm syndrome.
Right. We've got quite a lot of very worrisome similarities that are occurring between the state and the people, where the people don't realize that they're actually in quite an abusive relationship. And if you've ever been in an abusive relationship, you know that sometimes it takes a while before you figure out, oh, holy shit, this relationship is actually quite toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But up until that point, you'll defend that relationship because they're your significant other, they're your whatever, right? And I think a lot of people are caught up in that, where they don't want to admit that they're in an abusive relationship, because that sucks, that moment, right? That moment sucks. Oh, holy crap. I'm in an abusive, tyrannical relationship. What do I do, right? You know, who wants to go through that? None of us have wanted that experience.
Yeah.
You know, none of us have wanted to realize that we're actually in a toxic relationship.
I have heard people say, though, in defense to what you're saying, that it's like parents. The government is essentially your parents trying to take care of you. And in the same way that you take care of your, people have used this analogy to appeal to me because I love animals, like you take care of a dog or something like that. The government is essentially taking care of you, telling you to stay at home for your own safety. Now, of course, I'd say, well, obviously, I have my own free will. You know, I'm not a child. I have just like a child grows up, and once they have their awareness, they're able to make decisions for themselves. You know, I'm an adult. I'm not a child, and I should obviously have a right to decide if I want to leave my home. But a lot of people have this mindset that the government is doing what they're doing, and more so, if they hadn't done what they had done, that we would have seen a lot more deaths. And this is this argument you can't win, because they always say that it would have been a lot worse. Look at Australia. Look, we're obviously doing all right now, whereas everyone else in Europe, they're under severe lockdowns, whereas we're only locked. I mean, we're technically in a state of emergency, but we still got our freedom, mate. I mean, it's not so bad here. So that's part of the issue. Right? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many of your audience have actually looked into gaslighting as a technique of predators and abusers, and what does gaslighting actually look like? You know, and what happens when both within the individual being gaslit and what is the gaslighter trying to achieve? And I don't know how many of your audience have actually looked into the psychology of the relationship, not just uh, the what it looks like and sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
but when a really classic example of gaslighting is when you're always changing the rules, always changing the goalposts, and not providing any reasons why. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is typical gaslighting tactic number. 1.03 or whatever, right? It's just right. It's very atypical. Um, it sounds like first the dishes need to be done every morning, then the dishes need to be done every night.
Mm-hmm.
And why didn't you do the dishes last night? I told you to do them in the morning. And that level of psychological confusion where you never really quite know what's going on leaves you psychologically vulnerable to simply believing in that authority figure, simply taking whatever order comes next.
Sure. So you believe that that's at the heart of the issue, the fact that people are essentially being manipulated through these techniques like gaslighting, through controlled opposition, through these nefarious tactics that's made them more susceptible to this narrative. Because whereas I'd say I think we can all agree
Right.
that the real issue is the narrative, like the information, like what is actually true. If people didn't think that this situation was as dire as the government is saying it is, then obviously they wouldn't be so likely to take on these restrictions, right? But I guess what you're saying is at the heart of this, it's this incredibly um, powerful sense of brainwashing, manipulation, media that people are inundated with. That combined with the fear that's making them more susceptible to the tyranny, this Stockholm syndrome, so to speak.
Right, and I mean some of the terminology, and it's really good, even if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And even let's forget about the government and the state for just
Okay.
1 second,
All right.
yeah,
Sure.
and just say like you want to know whether or not you're in an abusive relationship with just another individual, or with an
Okay.
employer, or with a friend, or with a co-worker, or whatever, don't you? Of course, everyone wants to know that, right?
Sure.
That's important information, and recognizing these traits of an abusive relationship, I think, is also something that is very important for everyone to know. So, and again, it's tricky because I'm asking for an investment of energy from you here, aren't I? I'm asking for an investment of energy from your audience
Mm-hmm.
to actually go and look these some terminology up so that you know what these tactics look like. And if you look up, and I'll just put some gaps between the words. Gaslighting is one that everyone is quite familiar with. But
It's
do
by
you
pop
know
culture.
sea lioning?
No, haven't heard of that one.
It's another similar tactic. Different, but similar. Do you know negging?
Sure, that's a popular term in the pickup artistry world.
Right.
Yeah.
But negging doesn't just apply to pick up artistry, which is actually conning. That's what it
Mm-hmm.
is. It's
Okay.
it's psychological, you know, uh, mind fuckery. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how else to put it. But it can be used in other contexts as well. And then of course, there's fallacy and bias, which your audience will probably be familiar with some fallacy and bias, like for instance, the echo chamber bias, or
I love Dan Andrews, who cares about human rights when there are people dying. Like, human rights is not about life. It's about protecting people's life, freedom, which is essentially your life. But now it's like, we don't care about your rights. We care about the fact that people may die. Therefore, we're going to appeal to the potential for harm to come to take away your actual life. So use the imaginary to justify the actuality of what is happening, you having your rights been taken away. And to me, I look at that as a fallacious statement, but so many people buy into it because it sounds nice. It's like, yeah, I care about lives, mate. I don't care about human rights. You selfish people talking about human rights all the time.
Right, and let's, and I want to just say, because there's either a very deadly virus or a very deadly government, and that's really what we're looking at. Because if there is a deadly virus,
all right,
and maybe there's both, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So, and I want to ask your audience, to just think about history and think about all the deadly infections that have plagued mankind, literally, the Black Plague, and there's a number of them. There's a number of them, and look up how many deaths occurred as a result of all of those pandemics, right? And they're controversial. Some of them are in fact controversial, but we'll leave that bit alone.
Sure.
Now I want you to look up the deaths that governments have caused historically. People like Pol Pot and Stalin, and Hitler's the obvious one, and Mao Zedong, and I could go on.
Sure.
And do a comparison of death counts between death by pandemic and death by government, which is called domicide, by the way. Intentional death by government is called domicide.
Yep.
So it's a word. It's a word for a reason. It's a word for a reason. And when you do actually look at the numbers and you say, all right, let's assume that the government's telling the truth about everything, right? And we all know the government tells the truth about absolutely everything, right?
DBT, to mention a few, like cigarette smoking, aspartame, the list goes on and on.
Yeah. No, asbestos, what was that? I didn't see any prohibition of alcohol in our history. What are you even talking about? That didn't cause any issues.
And not even that long ago, back in the 70s, there was like a serious issue in regards to the amount of people that had been maimed from boom shakalakas, essentially. There's a well-known documentary on this, and this was. It's funny how when something becomes established as truth, it just gets swept under the rug. Like, people just pretend that it was never really disputed by the government. It was just, yeah, we know it happened, but it's not like we were telling everyone that it was safe to begin with. But this is something that was brought to my awareness. Like, this is in Australia as well. Like, the amount of people that have been affected. Well, it's happened many times by government policies, essentially bringing about this, boom shakalaka. It's not the first time this has happened, and we've had other repercussions. And it seems like we're just going around in circles, because this stuff.
And it's like, the government has never been responsible for any deaths. Not in this country. Not in the lucky country. Not here.
Not in the lucky country. Yeah.
No, not here. Unless you just happen to be indigenous, or you happen to be, like poor.
Sure.
Or you happen to be like just sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or if you have, I could really go on. I really could.
And look, Chris, we know this happens. We know that history.
Happens.
But let's look at the present moment here, because a lot of people are in the mindset that, look, from what I see, from the information that I have at my disposal now, I think this is serious. Now, the real question, I mean, put aside history. I know what you're saying, that we should be weary of our governments, but looking at the facts that we have at our disposal, what are the strongest arguments, the strongest evidences that you have that things are not as bad as they are, and that people are essentially buying into a government that is deadly in the fact that they're untrustworthy, as opposed to this virus being as deadly as some may report it is?
All right, so if you are pro, this is a deadly virus stance,
Sure.
that's your stance, you know, let's assume that's your stance, then I'm guessing you think we're all crazy idiots for potentially causing this deadly virus to spread amongst us by having, attending a protest or a
Yes.
rally or
Disinformation.
right, or
Yeah,
spreading disinformation, right. So,
absolutely.
and you would think that we're actually crazy for doing that. And you know what? If there is a deadly virus, then I give you some, you know, like fair enough for your viewpoint there. I get that, you know. So there have been people around the world now who have been protesting everything, right? Everything. And they don't wear masks and they don't vaccinate. They don't care about social. They hug each other and gather in large groups and do all these things. And they've been doing it in your face for over a year. Now, if there was this deadly pandemic, we'd all be dead. Each and every one of us protesters would be dead. All right, all of us, we would be corpses in the street.
That's it right there,
So
brother.
the biggest, and this is around the world. So the biggest proof, and that's why I wanted to attend one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because I wanted to show you that if there was a deadly, we'd be dead. You know, like if there was this deadly virus going around everywhere, well, then I got another week or so, you know. You know, but it's been a year, guys. You know, it's been a year.
Yeah.
And if you actually look up the homeless communities around the world,
Mm-hmm.
there was a deadly pandemic. Those people don't have much food. They haven't got great medical care. They've got poor conditions in which they live in and sleep in and eat in and da 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 da. You look into the homeless communities, they'd all be dead. All right? In a deadly they'd all be dead. You look into the refugee centres, you look into the crisis housing areas, they'd all be dead too.
Sure.
You know, because they're jammed together. They've got poor conditions. They've got no access to. They've got all the makings of an absolute catastrophe if there was a deadly pandemic.
Sure. I think what's happened is we've started relying less on our own observations, seeing what's going on around us. Because if there was a pandemic, I would think we'd all be seeing people dying, dropping dead. But now we rely on the mainstream media to report things that are going around. Because the reality is, if we hadn't switched on our TV, most of us would have no idea that this stuff is going on. But because we determine our sense of reality based off of what some guy on the screen is telling us, and I say we collectively, as in a lot of people still do this. You know, this is a reality for a lot of people, and because of that, it reminds me of this movie from a decade or so ago where they manufactured this war that wasn't actually going on by just presenting news reports about this war going on. This is a movie, right? About this massive war that was going on, all these people dying. And of course, the entire population was in incredible fear, when the reality is none of this stuff was going on. Because we moved into this age now where our sense of reality is based off of technology rather than our own empiricism, understanding through our own experience, we're very susceptible to what the media is saying. And of course, it doesn't take much research to realize that the media, largely in part, I call them legacy news because it's pretty much extinct, you know, like you can't rely on this as being a real source of information. they are controlled, like objectively, they are funded by, I think it's like 5 to 6 industries, like the major news outlets in Australia or around the world. They are fundamentally controlled when you actually do the research and you tie this down to the big owners by five five groups, individuals or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And you realize,
And there's
yeah,
like just over 2,000 billionaires and multi-billionaires in the world own literally half the world.
sure. So it's clearly biased.
So,
Clearly there's an agenda. I think that's easy to
you know, like,
recognize as well.
you know, and the money. And when you look at like some of these big pharma scientists, they're making wow dollars, like,
Mm,
you know, like a year's work and you're set up for the rest of your life, sort of wow dollars, you know, some of these guys are making big money.
mm-hmm.
So for them to go and say, well, actually, this little section of the project that I worked on and contributed to, because, you know, it's not like they're all working on this project together as one whole sort of, no, they've all got pieces of the project,
Sure.
and then they've got oversight, and then there's this hierarchy of knowledge of who knows what's going on, right?
Mm,
So most
sure.
of them only got this little tiny piece, and they're on big bucks,
So they think the
right?
entire idea of a conspiracy sounds ridiculous, not realizing that they're just like any business. There's someone at the top that is influencing people, saying, "Oh, look, I'm going to give you a lot of money here, and well, obviously, you know, if you come up with the results that I like, I'm going to continue to give you more money."
So one hand doesn't really know what the other hand is doing, right?
Mm,
And because if your one little piece is corrupt, right? And you know it's corrupt, and you're on big bucks, right?
mm-hmm.
And you know you're set for life if you just do another year or two or three or whatever, right? You've got a nice car, and you know exactly what happens to the kind of people that whistleblow these companies.
Sure. But look,
You've seen examples made,
for
you
those of us,
know.
yeah, Chris, for those of us that have an understanding of what's going on to some extent, right? Because I know a huge part of what you do is all about solutions, trying to get people to address this problem. And you spoke about how last time I was in a conversation with you, you mentioned how you were able to massively influence your community to reject the narrative because you're outside of Melbourne, and we're talking about solutions and strategies. And I was kind of relaying my experience, and I'm living in Victoria, which is a very well, from what I can see, a very pro. Hey, look, I'm going to let the government do whatever it needs to do, and I'm going to do what I'm told to do, kind of environment, right? And I see most people being against these conspiracy theorists, these anti boom shakalakers. But you, on the other hand, you mentioned that your experience. I mean, you barely see anyone wearing a face mask, and this is, I'm assuming, last year at some point, and you're seeing most people rejecting this narrative. What? How did that come about?
So there's this book that you can look up. It's called Small Acts of Revolution,
Mm-hmm.
Small Acts of Resistance, and in it there's a whole bunch of stories of different peace activists throughout time and history that have done different things to raise awareness and attention to different issues. And this doesn't just apply for boom shakalakas or face masks or education or health or fitness or whatever you want. Again, it's about what did you do when it comes time to look in that mirror. And there's a lot of examples that social activists, and I think this is just good knowledge to have anyway, where even if you are pro boom shakalaka, let's say you are pro, but maybe you want to know about how to get more knowledge in your community
Mm-hmm.
about I don't know, let's pick something completely non-controversial. Um, a social issue that we all care
Schooling
about.
system, education.
Education, right? So
Sure.
you want to get some more artistic studies happening in your school. That's what you want to get happening, right? So how do you do that though? How do you create a movement of people that are interested in getting more artistic studies? And there's a lot of examples in history where social activists, and there's many different things that have been done. So I just want to give you some really easy, right now, classic examples, yeah, that people have done to, let's say, get some more art. And hell, wouldn't that be great? Anyway, like, so get some more artistic stuff happening in your school. You could do a pamphlet drop explaining to people exactly how much benefit there is in getting kids being more creative, right? You could do run an event with kids doing sidewalk chalk on the pavement. You could do posters that are on telegraph poles or on other public spaces. You can approach businesses and ask them if they would be interested in getting involved in helping your school become more artistic, and how and create an information pack for those businesses so they can understand why they should get involved,
Hmm.
what's in it for them, what's in it for the community, and so on and so forth. Just like any other form of social activism throughout history, and there have been some really inspiring and inventive examples of entire regimes, entire dictatorships taken down, right, by people putting TVs in shopping trolleys and walking them around town. I kid you not. I kid you not. That's a real historical story that actually happened. You can look that up. That
Yeah,
was
like
how they protested lies
yeah, I
in the
think back to
news.
the situation with East Berlin and the West, and essentially how they put a ban on, I think it was one of the areas, from anything from the West, like jeans and music and all that kind of stuff, because they didn't want them to be exposed to this way of life and for them to see how good things can be. So I see little things like that, people being even able to access TV. I mean, we see this. This is why China obviously doesn't allow people to access certain sites, or pretty much most of the information that really gets people to think here, that we can access in the West, because obviously the way that you perceive reality, the culture, things that you're exposed to, that will influence your position on a lot of things. Like it's on a deeper level. It comes down to what we're exposed to. I think that often shapes our worldview and what we think is going on in the
Right.
world. Right.
And right now in China,
Mm-hmm.
there's a vast amount of people who think Tiananmen Square is
Never happened.
just a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. Yeah.
It's not real. It
Yeah.
never happened. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. And no, what are you talking about?
Sounds like
They would
crazy
never do
over.
anything like that. What are you on about?
When you see what's been
What's
happening
Tiananmen
here,
Square? Is
I
that
mean,
even a place?
yeah, I mean, you've obviously heard of what happened to Dr. Zeus, right? How his books are have been taken down from Amazon, and this guy
Yeah,
was so staunch when it came to opposing what the Nazis were doing, because he understood how these policies, these like the underlying philosophy of the Nazis, like how it actually came about, like, and within his books, he basically orchestrated how this thinking comes about. And the argument here is one of the reasons I think they're taking books like this down is they're clearly pointing out that the signs that we are seeing right now are clearly the signs that we've seen previously in history, like when a government decides to lock people down, censor information in order to keep people safe, you know. And one of the things I want to touch on, because whereas I see you're all about solutions, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you believe a lot of this stuff comes down to people being exposed to the right kind of information per se. I think one of the things about this issue that is so tumultuous that gets people so um, wilded up, right, is the fact that the vaccine issue, to me, it comes down to even beyond the information, like the heart of what you believe. Because I always talk about the philosophy behind this thing. Like fundamentally, when you look at human rights, like this fundamental idea that they are unalienable, that someone doesn't get the right to force you to do something, right? Because you have a right, provided you are not harming anyone in the process. This is the philosophy of natural law, right? Um,
Right.
Now, that's fundamentally something that has been honored within the common law. You know, regardless of whether or not you're in the UK or Canada, this is the fundamental theme, and the constitutions typically protect these rights, and governments are supposed to uphold them. But we've now devolved into this situation where because of security, this need to keep people safe, the government is able to justify eroding people's freedoms. And there's a huge section of the population that at the core believe that it's acceptable to take away people's rights. This is why I always come down to this is why at the heart of this thing, whereas I understand that this is an information war, and I think people being exposed to the truth would probably change their viewpoint to some extent. At the heart of it, to me, it's about people understanding rights, valuing their sovereignty. I think it's a cultural war. It's about getting the shift to a focus on people thinking it's actually cool not to actually protect your rights. You know, people think it's selfish now, the fact that I don't want to sacrifice myself for the greater good. And this is the heart of the issue. People think it's acceptable for people not to have any freedoms because it's selfish, and you have to be thinking about the greater whole. When classically, the idea of freedom, like there was a time when people would go to war to protect their freedom, and they were very skeptical about their governments.
Lest we something something.
Yes, yes, yes,
You know?
yeah.
So again, I want to be a little different here. I want to be a
Okay,
little different than what is normally um, these sorts of programs are normally about. So
okay,
normally what happens is we invite you to check out these medical studies or check out this doctor or that professor, or there's this channel where these Zoom meetings are happening where they're discussing risks or whatever, right? I'm not going
sure.
to do that. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, and I
Instead, what I
appreciate that.
want to do is I want you to invite you to have a serious debate. And when I say a serious debate, I want to ask you, do you know how to debate? Like what fellas, how to avoid being illogical, how to avoid being biased, how to actually be on point, cogent in and all of that. Because here's the thing, people who don't know how to debate, if you don't know how to actually have a proper debate, then there's a good chance that you'll be reduced to fighting. And I don't want to fight with anyone, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Not interested in fighting or arguing with anybody. I want to debate with the moon itself. Like I really do. You know, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
Sure.
I want to disagree with you. I want to disagree in a way that's going to make me and you feel
Have
good at the
congruence.
end of it.
That's my
Huh?
philosophy. It's funny you say this because I often promote this exact same thing. And one of my favorite books is not only how to win friends and influence people, but it's how to never lose an argument. And strangely enough, the whole book is about not getting into an argument fundamentally, because even
Right.
when you win one, you leave someone feeling angst towards you that they've somehow been wronged. And it's all about understanding the
Classic
psychology.
material.
And then taught like the author is considered to be one of the best trial lawyers, and actually talks about the art of arguing in court, and how there's some people that typically moved by emotive language, but essentially there's a distinction between trying to be affected and trying to be honest, open, and actually have a real argument. That's what you want to do when you're not having an argument, so to speak, even though it sounds kind of
Right.
contradictory, but you want to, like, there are so many people that straw man your arguments. Like, anytime I say I believe in human rights, they say, oh, you don't care about people dying. Why are you being oh, you're a conspiracy theorist? No, it's got nothing to do with the science. No, okay, the world is like, people are dropping down like fly. It doesn't change my argument, but immediately people use these tactics because they're trying to win an argument as opposed to being honest. So that's like a very important thing to me. And I feel like, yeah, we do need to do that. We do need to honestly look at what's going on. The issue, though, Chris, is that I would argue there are a lot of people you see in media all the time that don't want that. They want to win at whatever cost. And I don't want to sound negative, but fundamentally, and I see this happen all the time. This is what lawyers do. The entire system is an adversarial system where it's not about, oh, I think I have the truth and you have the truth. Oh, let's come together and see if we can work what's going on. No, it's like, I want to win no matter what because I get paid at the end of the day. I have a reputation, and we will fight. And the best lawyers are the ones that obfuscate, that use this legalese to trick people into doing things and admitting fault. It's unfortunately, there's a very big distinction between having an honest conversation, conversational jiu-jitsu, as I like to call it, and actually having this argument where you're simply just trying to win. You don't care about the facts. You don't care about the truth.
Right. And I mean, there's so much, let's say, because let's say you are, again, pro-government. Let's say that is your position,
Okay.
Then you would argue that everything that I believe is propaganda or is misinformation or disinformation or whatever you want to call it.
Not necessarily, but I see a lot of people would do that. Like, if we're being like, a lot of people tend to do that, but just because you are opposed to government doesn't mean that everything that you believe is propaganda. But typically, people that are opposed to government realize that they're deceptive, therefore tend to buy into things that are considered to be conspiracy theories, which the other side will see as being conspiracy theories and propaganda because they don't accept that the government is telling them the truth. But I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So now all of a sudden we've got two people who are looking at each other saying, you're just using propaganda and using different words, which is synonymous with propaganda, because conspiracy theorist and propaganda is pretty much synonymous. Same with misinformation and they're pretty much synonymous.
Yeah. What
There's
is
not
propaganda?
much difference.
Yeah. I mean, it's just.
What is propaganda?
How do you define? Is it information? This is
so
in favor.
And what is misinformation? How do we define these things?
That's what I like to get to.
And so, but I want to say we need to start with some common ground here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are pro-government,
okay,
and you think I'm spreading disinformation, then I'm sure that we can agree as common ground that there is definitely bullshit happening here. All right? Now, it could be that the bullshit is all mine. I'm willing to accept this possibility. It could be that the bullshit is all yours. It could be that the bullshit is shared evenly between us, you know?
There are some areas, anyway, in regards to the science, because that is somewhat...
Right?
Squirrely, yeah.
So we do know that there is bullshit here, though. We know that there is propaganda. We know that these things are happening, and we know, historically speaking, that when propaganda is rife within a community, whether it's pro or against or whatever, then someone's got an agenda. Then someone has some agenda at play, and I think that's something really easy that we can all agree on, because I like common ground, right? Common ground is great, because common ground, because we can all agree that there is bullshit happening in society, right? That's common ground right there, and we can all, what that bullshit is, we might disagree on. And
I like that approach, man.
Let's sniff it together
Yeah, let's work with this. Okay.
You know, but I want to build some more common ground, and I want to see. I hope that if you are pro-government, you see what I'm trying to do here. You see that I'm trying to
Have congruence. Yeah.
right connect
Sure.
with you.
Here's some more common ground. Here's some more common ground. Because I think most people, right, and I could be wrong, but I think most people would want what's best for their family, their friends. They don't want people. They want anyone to needlessly suffer. And when they think about their future, I ask them, do they want to live in a world where basically the government controls everything that you do, in terms of whether or not you can leave your home, in terms of whether you can leave the country. You have a look at the social credit system in term, and this is not a conspiracy theory because people can see that these more Orwellian forms of restrictions are being applied. And I asked them, where do you see this going? Because you think this is something that's only going to happen for 2 weeks? Obviously not. It didn't happen just for 2 weeks. Do you think it's going to be something that's constantly reoccurring? And I think people can see that. Granted, if this thing is happening for a short period of time, they may be inclined to give up their rights for some temporary security, but they can, if they're being honest with themselves, see that this thing doesn't have a definitive end in sight. And if it goes away, the fact that we're moving more and more into a society where it's like that Black Mirror episode where you have a social credit system, and if you do or say something out of line, and you're worried about the government destroying your life just for the slightest thing, it's probably not the best society to live in. Now, granted, like, yeah, sorry, do you want to say something? Because I see that's a possible scenario, but I can equally see people saying they want the security, but I don't think most people be willing to give up that much security. It's proportionate to most people. They think it's justified now, but maybe not later.
I would volunteer my time.
Okay.
I would dedicate my life. All right, happily, happily, yeah, to delivering you, the pro-government person, the pro-COVID is a deadly pandemic person. I will personally, and I'm sure many others in our movement would agree with me here, we will deliver you foodstuffs, we will deliver you goods and services as you call and need, and you can stay at home, you can lock down, you can do all that stuff that you want to do. We won't. We'll help you. I'll volunteer. I'll volunteer for. Would you volunteer?
That's, you got me thinking
sure
about that.
A lot of people would volunteer, and then we can run an experiment.
You said that, Matt. Yeah, I'd have to.
We'll run an experiment. If we don't die,
yeah, absolutely. I'd have to do what I think is best for them, because the thing is, if I think they're feeding into this delusion, right, by staying at home all the time, and I don't believe that them continuing to do that for something that I don't believe is an actual threat, I could be doing them more harm by feeding them this, like perpetuating this false perception they have by giving them food. But I'm with you. I think I would do that if I believed that it was going to help them.
Well, I think I'd show up every week and just be knock knock, your food's here, we're still not dead. And how many weeks of knock knock, your food's here, I'm still not dead will it take? And if you are, because I believe in freedom, I believe in human rights, and if you are terrified, you've got every right to lock down and bunker up and I'll even sanitize everything that I put on your porch and wipe it down.
Sure. I love the fact that you're willing to do that, man. I love you for having that sentiment.
I will do that for you.
But I want to say this to you, Chris, because here's the thing. What do you say to people? Because I feel, I'm just a realist about this, that there is a large section of people that want you to stay at home. It's not enough for them to be locked in their home, and not enough for them to take the boom shakalaka. They want you to be boom shakalaka because they're scared about SARS 2.0. They want you not frolicking around and potentially affecting them. And it's one thing for you to sacrifice yourself, right? Like if someone wants to stay at home. But this is where it moves into the realm of tyranny, where you want to force your altruism because you think it's for the benefit of everyone else. Like, what mother wouldn't sacrifice the life of many people around them to protect their child, right? And this is the dynamic. This is the mindset of people that don't believe in freedom. Generally speaking, I don't want to generalize here, right? But it's not enough for them to say, "Hey, look, all right, if you don't want to take the vaccine, that's fine. But look, I'm going to take it because I care and I want to help everyone else." No, they're like, "No, because I'm concerned about what's going to happen to my family, my friends. I'm sorry, Chris, but you don't get to go outside. You don't get to put me at risk. I don't care about your freedom. That's dangerous." And that there is the issue.
That's yeah, and it's hard to it's it's hard because like if you're doing that, you're impugning upon my rights, and you believe
Exactly.
that you've got a right to do that because of the context and the circumstance and rah rah rah.
Yeah, it's an appeal to potentiality. This is
But
ultimately what it goes into.
I
But yeah, it's not their
I
right to do that. Yeah.
I want to tell you
Mm-hmm.
right now that hurts me every
Okay.
time. It hurts me every time my rights are impugned upon.
Mm-hmm.
It it hurts every time I see it happen to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts me, and so whilst you're there telling me all of that stuff, I want you to know that we're all hurting whilst you're saying all of that stuff. That hurts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then through that pain, and if you don't think having your human rights ignored or having your human rights abused or having someone say maybe we should abuse your human rights, if you don't think that is a pain, please do some reading about human rights. Please do some reading about some people that have done incredible things for human rights and gone to incredible lengths for human rights. If you want some proof about how important these things are,
Yeah.
and it's because we know how much it hurts when we take someone's human rights away.
Sure. That's a really powerful rant there, man. And I just want to say something else just to give this a bit of context. I feel as if the people that are scared about what might happen if you were able to have your human rights, like, oh, what happens if you infect someone and this virus comes to this country and many people die? I often make the argument, and I think this is a good, it just shows where we're at with this. One is, they're both grounded in fear, right? To some extent anyway, right? These positions, but one is grounded in this fear of like what might happen. And then the contrast, people like you and myself that love freedom, I am worried about what hurts me is actually in the moment, in present moment, not potentiality, seeing people around me commit suicide because they have been deprived of access to their friends and family, seeing people in these aged care facilities deprived of access to their friends and family, seeing people that aren't able to go to elective surgery, seeing people being dehumanized like that, not being able to walk around the street, and
I've
seeing
been called a
people,
pig on the
yeah,
street.
actually dying from issues relating to I'm not going to say it here, but essentially being deprived of their human rights because certain things are forced upon them. So I'm dealing in the present moment in what I would call reality as far as what is. That's not like things that are actually happening. And one is dealing in fear, in the potential for something to happen. So granted, I respect, like I acknowledge the fact that you were in pain with people that have their freedom because you're worried. I'm also worried as well. And I feel your pain, but I also feel it because of things that I'm actually seeing happening around me. So they're both equal. The only distinction is that one is based in what might happen and the other is based in what actually is happening.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Stanford prison experiment I don't know if you're familiar with the Stanford
I
prison
am familiar with
experiment.
it. Is it the
It was
one
made
where
into a movie.
Is it the one where I have this image in mind where they're able to one person is able to observe like a whole bunch of people, but they can't be observed, or is this something else? Like you're
This is
looking at a
something
prison
else.
system, all right, through some kind of like technology where you could essentially basically everyone in the prison felt like they were being watched because they could be watched at any moment. But anyway, maybe it's something else. Sorry, go on.
So what they did was a university experiment,
All right.
right? Is they got a class of university students, and they flipped
Mm,
a coin, right?
okay.
And half the class ended up prisoners, and half the class ended up guards. And what they wanted to do, and they sectioned off an area of the university, and what they wanted to do is test not just imprisonment, just not guilty, innocent, forget that.
Yeah.
Just test what happens when we imprison people. You know, what actually happens. Like, let's run the experiment.
Mm,
And so they flipped a coin for every student. Half became prisoners, half became guards.
hmm.
I think it was 6 days the experiment lasted before it was cancelled immediately because of the massive alterations that occurred in the guards. They became legitimately sadistic. They became legitimately sadistic. They became legitimately horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And the prisoners became legitimately mentally ill. So, but it was randomized, so it was there's no guilt or innocent there. It's just the
Sure.
effect of imprisonment. And so, okay, you believe in lockdown, but I'm going to ask you not to become a guard. Yeah?
Mm. Or how about a police
Please?
officer, eh?
Right. To go, yeah. Let the police do it. Let the let the doctors and the. Do you hold a scientific qualification? Well, if you don't hold a legal or scientific, if you don't hold a medical qualification according to the Nuremberg Code, you're not supposed to mandate any medical anything, or issue any medical anything. So if you don't actually, I mean, a lot of people are like, you're just a conspiracy theorist. You don't understand the science. And it's like, well, no, you work in 7-Eleven. Like, or you're a chippy. You're
in fairness, though, it's the officials like Dan Andrews, ScoMo, that are obviously using the science, saying these medical experts are recommending this. That's why they are applying these restrictions, and they're doing it because I think they have the public support. But their argument is that, look, mate, I'm just following the science, and of course, the science is not real science. It's scientism, which is a religion. We're not speaking about an open system where people are able to question the default position. It's like you have anything that goes against the narrative, and I'm sorry, we're gonna have to censor you. But let's not get into that.
Look, at the end of the day, if I'm wrong, and I've spent all this last year fighting for freedom and human rights, and a lot of people die because I was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to live with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to live with that, and that's hard. That's weighty. That's weighty. That's not a small thing to live with. I don't want to hurt anyone. Well, I don't want to hurt anyone.
But I don't think you're hurting. You see, this is the philosophical distinction between what you're saying and what I'm saying. Like, I think if I choose to be free, if I choose to live my life, and people are hurt by this and go out and jump off a building and die. Now, if you're looking at this consequentially within the realm of like utilitarian ethics, cause and effect, even though they're not directly related, I don't think I'm responsible for that. I have my own right to live my own life, provided I'm not hurting anyone directly. But when people see this consequential argument and say, oh, by you not staying at home and like actually living your life, because it's potentially led to thousands of people dying, you're responsible. I'm like, what? That just does not that's not how human rights works, man. You're using this realm of like positive rights, like violence through inaction, even though it's not directly related. Like if you want to take on that attitude, there are thousands of people that are dying around the world right now, and you could be saving them. Like, why don't you go and help all these people right now that are being deprived of food and water? By you not helping them and giving them food and water, they're dying. So you should feel guilty for that. Now, I'd say,
Well, it was like 8 million deaths of starvation last year. 8
sure,
million.
you're not
8 million.
responsible for that. And
You
that's
know,
whereas I feel like you, I feel pain when I see people go through. Like if I saw someone commit suicide because of these lockdowns and because I didn't do enough work, I would feel sorry for the fact that they've committed suicide, but I still wouldn't feel responsible for the fact that I haven't gone out and worked harder to try to educate people. I just feel bad, but I don't hold myself accountable. And I think it's a beautiful attitude when people take on this sense of responsibility. And this is something the bleeding heart liberals have, and I love this about them. But you have to, if you're trying to be sane, make a distinction between things that you're directly responsible for and things that are horrible, but they're horrible through no direct consequence of your own, if you know what I mean.
yeah. So do you know the concept of cosmocentrism?
I may, but I'm not familiar with that actual term. Explain it to me, and I'll let you know if I'm familiar with it.
Centricism.
Cosmocentral is, I haven't heard that concept before, but
So there's this viewpoint of circles within circles within circles and out and out and out.
okay.
And it's a philosophy. And basically, so in the center, I will act in my best interests, whatever I perceive that to be, and that's what I'm going to do. And then we're going to go out a step. And now I'm going to realize that if I act in the best interests of my immediate family, that reciprocally benefits me. Okay? So if I act in the best interests of my immediate family is supported, and therefore I'm more supported. So there's this relationship happening, and that benefits me. So that's in my best interests. Now I'm family centric.
Yes.
Now
Is that the concept?
Yeah, man, this is a concept.
Can I say, I call that agape, because the concept within agape, which is universal love, is basically you have a family unit. In a family, typically, not always the case, you consider their flourishing, your flourishing, therefore you act in their best interests. You're together. Agape is when you expand that towards not just the family, but towards the community, towards the entire planet. You inclusive. You love people as if they're your brother or sister. You know what I mean? And it's a concept that is spoken about a lot in Christianity, but it has deeper roots. Plato would speak about this, but it's true universal love. It's the kind of love where you are truly selfless. Your success is based off of everyone else's success. Therefore, you have the complete and utter success of everyone at hand.
Right, and it's like, and can you imagine for me, it's a little bit like a finger arguing with a liver. It's like so, humans fighting each other. We're the same organism.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
We're different cells of the same organism. There's only one humanity. There isn't another humanity on this planet. There's only one of us. And when you're at that world humanity-centric viewpoint, and it goes out from family to tribe, which includes, and kith now, not just kin, kith and kin. And it goes out again to it's not called nation-centric. It's got another word. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
And then it goes out again to humanity. And once you're at that humanity level, you realize things. You start realizing, oh, holy crap, we're producing 80 billion articles of fast fashion every year.
Fast fashion.
Yeah, clothes.
Okay.
80 billion with a B. 10 times the population of Earth. You start seeing the water, you start seeing the food happening, and then you start seeing medical. Because why is medicine different from country to country? I mean, like the biology of a person doesn't change if they cross a border.
Mm. I mean, there
So
are a few
how?
subtle differences. I mean, like for instance, I suffer. Apparently, you suffer. You're more susceptible to certain viruses or certain things based off of your DNA. And like, I know I don't get burnt in the sun very easily, but obviously you might. But you know what I'm saying? This like, but I'm on the same page as you, brother. Fundamentally,
Sure.
we all have two legs. You know, we all have two arms, humanity, and we all should be, for the most part, benefiting from the same kind of medical breakthroughs. You know.
Right. So if
Mm.
and you got to ask yourself, why is medicine so different from country to country? And sure, you're saying that, you
Legality.
know, what
Yeah.
what you said there is very true. There are medical differences between races, and not just skin color. There are other medical differences, biological differences between races, and but but if you cross a border,
Mm-hmm.
your DNA hasn't changed. You haven't changed,
Yeah.
but the medicine has.
Well,
You
yeah. The
know?
laws, the legality. That's something that,
What?
yeah, laws are often the generalized ethics that we find within a community, you know, whereas I believe in the universality of right and wrong, you know, like it's always wrong for me if I hurt you regardless of what part of the world I'm in, you know, but a lot of laws, for instance, with these lockdowns, there are certain countries that will actually arrest you if you leave and you don't wear a mask. And then there are other countries where it's like, oh, okay, it's no biggie, and we can take
They,
it to a
they,
more extreme level on pretty much every issue you can think of. And that's because we're working, as I'm sure you're aware, under a kind of law known as admiralty law, which is a private law, which is a law. It's not the law of the land. It's not the law. It's not the natural law. And this is how we get all of these crazy medical laws, like, oh, you're not allowed to take marijuana because it's been deemed by this community, this body of priests, so to speak, that it's bad for you. But it's these people in another country, they can use it, and they're saying it's good for them. Well, look, mate, our science here is better, so you got to listen to the science of this country, and that's how we get this obfuscated, morally relativistic system of legality.
which has got nothing to do with health now. Now we're talking about morals, aren't we? And an imposition of moralistic viewpoint. So I know what's good, not you. I'm going to impose what I know of what good is
Exactly.
upon you, and
Yeah.
that's, you know, like and again, like, we're all going to have to look in the mirror after all this is said and done.
Mm.
Maybe you and I, we're going to look like fools.
Well,
This is
yeah.
recorded.
I mean, I don't have a problem
I'm
looking
willing
like a
to accept
fool.
that.
But the thing is, in my worldview, I could never look like a fool because it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 or a million years from now. I doesn't care. I don't care how dangerous a virus is. My position is based off of what I call the natural law. I don't care if this virus is like 99% deadly, man. It's not gonna. Now, granted, I may change my behavior in terms of what I'll do, but I'm not going to force people to sacrifice themselves or to give up their freedoms. That's my worldview. But not to harp on that, man. Like what you were saying, the heart of what you were saying, I really resonate with because whereas we all have different terminology for addressing what we feel, what you're talking about is this realization where you start seeing us all working together in the same skies and wanting the benefit for everyone. Like I think, are you familiar with the concept of the overview effect?
Yeah,
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 it's one of my favorite documentary where these astronauts, like many of them had seen the planet in all its majesty, and they'd spoken about this feeling they get where they see the interconnected nature of this of the planet, and essentially, one of them comes down to Earth, pun intended, and petitions a library, speaks about this feeling that he got. And he spoke about this feeling, and apparently the librarian was able to dig up a book that made reference to another term apparently found within Vedic scripture known as it's called Salvakalpa Samadhi. Samadhi is a state of consciousness, and the way that it's described, like this astronaut really resonated with it, and it's described as if you were seeing the world. And I'm going to paraphrase here, I'm going to butcher it, but essentially you're seeing the world not just through your eyes, but through the eyes of Brahma, which is essentially the universe. And it's like you see that everything is both connected and separate. Like there's this paradoxical nature of the universe. Yes, I'm having my own individual experience, but I'm also connected and part of the whole. And it's this beautiful theme that I find echoed within so many philosophies. Like when people get high and they talk, hey man, I feel like we're all like part of the same thing. And you hear people talk about this in systems. Like there's this science that talks about the systems nature of the universe. You realize that on every level it's kind of like one representing the whole kind of thing. You know, have a look at the fact that we're made up of 50 billion cells, but our cells with their own kind of like awareness make up who we are. And then of course human beings are made up of many, many billions, but they make up they're like the white blood cells of the planet, you know. And unfortunately we're fucking up the planet at this point in time, but we are part of
And
something greater
saving
than
it.
ourselves. Yes.
And saving it.
Yes, but would you, in fairness, would you
And
say for them,
saving.
how do you look at the projection of the current planet of the last 10, 20, 30 years? Do you think if you looked at the planet, right, and you saw human beings and what they're doing, do you see them as being this beautiful light that's just filling the entire planet with beauty, or do you see them as a cancer that's basically encroaching
Both.
yeah, well,
Both.
I think we're moving to a point where I mean, God forbid. I mean, I'm a spiritual person myself, but we're going to start doing some serious damage. You know, I mean, we are now at a point where we have the capacity to completely obliterate this planet. I feel like our technological level is far more advanced than our psychological or spiritual ability, and we now have it upon ourselves to really do some irreversible damage if we don't take care. And I personally think we've been here.
Already done.
You think it's already done? I mean, I'm talking
Oh,
about
I
nuclear
think
weapons.
there's been many irreversible damages done. I think there's been many. I think there's been millions of irreversible damages already done.
Mm-hmm.
Incalculable, in fact. I mean, there are entire species that have been lost. There have been hundreds of thousands of entire species that have been lost.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
There's been incalculable losses to all life,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, from that agape, from that human global cosmocentric point of view, you know, it's really easy to see what's happening here. It's not hard. Down in that family-centric point of view, where you're worried about the wife, and you're worried about the kids, and you're worried about the bills, you're worried about what's going to happen this coming Easter, where the lockdown's going to happen. You're worried about your boss and that co-worker, and you've sort of secretly got the hots for so and so, but you don't want to talk about that, you know. And this is down in that family-centric point of view. This is what I'm talking about now. This is what's going on in that world, right? And you know, I think it's not until you start really coming out to that global perspective that things start looking very, very, very different. And what you said, are we a cancer or are we saving it? Well, you know, there was this group of students. We've got people who have been living in garbage dumps for 4 generations now, landfill for 4 generations, you know? And these group of students got a bunch of instruments that were completely broken, completely destroyed, and they repaired them. And they created an orchestra. And
oh wow, yeah,
it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And their music is stunning. And you look at that and it's like it's so easy to get caught up in seeing the fact that they've been living there for 4 generations in
Mm,
fucking landfill,
sure.
sorting through looking for metals, you know, and but then you see that orchestra, and
It's
it
representative of
it
the human spirit. The fact that we
right. You
take
see,
shit
it's
and turn it
both. It's
into gold.
both. It's
Yeah.
not one. It's
Yeah.
not the other.
But
It's
I
both.
but I always come
You
back,
know.
as much as I sometimes sound ominous in my outlook, the fact that we within ourselves, I think we have this drive towards making things better, our imagination, right? When we're being the true people that we are, like I think our ability, our humanity is within our ability to create. I think our divinity is within that. The fact that we can imagine, granted, we create horrible things, but there's always the hope, the potential to uplift ourselves. And the fact that we are in a time now, like you spoke about these kids being able to make the most amazing instruments from their garbage dump, but we are right now seeing people innovate the most incredible technologies, despite all the crap that we're seeing. I'm not sure if you've seen the documentary Thrive 2. It's one of my favorite documentaries, came out last year, but we now have legitimate, I'm not talking about hocus pocus, airy fairy, oh, you're like a conspiracy theorist, like legitimate free energy devices. There's something called radiosonic energy. It's made by this Zimbabwean. Like they feature this in this documentary, and this stuff has been around for a long time, but it's always been
Oh, it's
under
a
this,
long time. Free
yeah,
energy
absolutely. But this,
tech.
it's unbelievable just how, like, to see this stuff work right there and then, and you realize this technology is around. We could essentially like replace so much of the forms of energy that were, the polluting the environment and so forth. But beyond that, there we like if we actually came together, we didn't have this hungry opportunistic mentality that a lot of these corporations have. And this is what always drew me towards like technology, just the fact that we have it within ourselves to completely change this world. I don't think, regardless of how dark the night is, that there isn't the potential for us to light the way. All it takes, as Martin Luther King said, is one candle to light an entire dark cave. And there are candles out there. You're a candle, my brother. There are people
And
out there.
you can.
All it takes is one person, man, to actually make a difference, whether it's through inspiration, knowledge, by just being the change they want to see in the world, or through creating technologies that essentially influence to change the landscape. So, granted, I talk about how horrible things are going. I think equally so, the very nature of being human, the very nature of, I mean, Trent, forget human, the very nature of being, there's always the capacity to uplift ourselves. There's this what's called the centropic force. People speak about entropy, everything, eventually being destroyed, but within us, we're always matriculating to high levels of sophistication. We have it within ourselves to uplift ourselves from our plight. So I am actually very optimistic about the future. Granted, I'm also a realist. I believe eventually, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 10 years from now, I don't know, but we will move towards a better society. And I think we'll be proud of the work that
I think
we've
so
done.
too. I'm watching the dark and the light script play out, and I
Mm.
mean, um, I might be a little biased here, but I reckon the light's gonna win it, you know.
That's what
But
I
I
feel.
might
Yeah.
be I might be a little biased. I'll be
Oh,
honest.
the arc of, as to quote
Um,
Martin Luther King, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it always bends towards justice. And granted,
that's it.
we
That's
look
it.
back and it's hard to see how we're moving forward, but believe me, like we are moving forward. And speaking to people like you,
Oh,
like
definitely.
I want to say, despite the fact that I critique a lot of the things you say, I absolutely love the fact that you have so much heart and compassion within you. And ultimately, I can see even when you disagree with people, you still come from this place of compassion and you really want to unite people. I think that's what's lacking within this truth movement. A lot of people just want to focus on the division, and I, as a realist, do get caught up in that a lot of times. But it's important to realize that even our enemies deserve to be saved, so to speak. Not to sound self-righteous or anything like that, but are worthy of our compassion. And I think we need to come together in congruence, not just truth and not just being real as, you know what I mean?
Right. It's not a test of compassion to
Mm-hmm.
be nice to your friends. Okay? That's not a test. That's tomorrow. That's easy. Everyone can do it. It's not a test of compassion to be nice to your mum. Or it might be. Depends on your mum, I suppose.
I see what you're
But
saying.
it is a test of compassion when an enemy or a supposed enemy is spitting venom in your face to say, look, can we really just talk about this? And now that's a test of compassion. Now that is a test of compassion. And I want to invite, and we are being tested, are we not? We are being tested. And it's so easy to get caught up in whichever fear script, and there's a lot of fear scripts running. Because some people are totally caught up in the fear of boom shakalakkas, right? And virus shedding and and they want to know all the risks and all the dirt and there's a new risk out today and now now there's a new but honestly at some point you've got to say to yourself, look, I'm not taking the fucking thing. What am I doing to help? Because just learning about more reasons why I'm not going to take it. At some point, you've got to say, well, there's no point in knowing more about why I'm not going to take that thing. You know, at some point, I want to do something else. And I think, and I it's so easy to get caught up, and there's so many fear scripts, you know. There's so many fear scripts. There's, you know, the boom shack. There's the racial warmongering fear script going on at the moment. It's so easy to get caught up in that because you can just see beating after violent incident, after horrible incident, after horrible workplace, after horrible Facebook post. So it's really easy to just keep getting caught up in that fear script. But if all you're really doing is just going over the same fear script over and over and over and over and over and over, what are you actually doing? At some point, you've got to stop and you've got to say, well, I'm going to have to do something, you know? So what are you going to do? And again, I invite you to consider some of the earlier social activism techniques. Because a lot of left wing are very passionate about racial and racial justice and awareness and cultural sensitivities and awareness and traditional sensitivities and awareness. And they're also very sensitive about environmental issues.
Sure.
And awareness and economic issues. I invite you to do a letterbox drop. Chalk up the pavement with some documentaries explaining Indigenous rights for all of the community. And you know what? I'll chalk up some information about the boom shakalakkas right next to you.
All right.
I don't want to fight you. You know, I want us all to work together on all of these issues. And I think we can. I don't think it's a competition. I think that's a trick. You know, I think that's a trick.
No doubt. And you know? I definitely I admire, and I think the attitude, the solution-oriented attitude is the right approach. I love the fact that you're more focused on trying to address how to resolve the problem, because it's one thing understanding what the problem is. We can all see, most of us, I believe, can see what's going on to some extent. But without talking about solutions, we're pretty much just mental masturbating, so to speak. So,
right. We're just on this hamster wheel going over and over the same ground, right? Oh yes, absolutely. They're deadly. Oh yeah, they're they're very risky. Oh, they're still risky. You know, we, you know, some people are just new to this, and then they might be pro, and there might be, what risks? I don't know about any risks. I don't know. What are you talking about? You know, like,
that's true.
I get that, you know, and I get that. But there's other people in your audience who are like, no, you don't understand. There's these nanoparticulates which will do this and that. And I'll tell you about every single one of these 3.78 million billion risks that there are. And there's got to be this point where you're going to have to stop that.
And then there are those that talk about the risk in terms of your rights being eroded day in day, and how we're moving into a state where essentially we will have no rights. In fact, a lot of people argue we don't have them now, and they.
So what are you doing about that?
Education, awareness, like giving people an understanding, like culture.
Awareness.
A huge part of this is not even cerebral.
Right.
It's getting people to value these things. It's a value system. Sometimes you have a look at the society 50 years ago, people had very different values to what we have now. And a lot of it comes down to me personally, being the change you want to see in the world. Like, to me, it's not real change isn't necessarily happening within the mind. It's happening within the heart, the anahata. And when people open up their hearts to you, whether it's through laughter, whether they just like you, they enjoy, like when when you're around someone, you fucking just hate them, if you don't want to accept what they're saying. A lot of people get in that mindset. A lot of people aren't thinking here. This is something I got from, How to Never Lose an Argument. More often than not, people are influenced not by logical arguments, but by emotions. People far more remember how you make them feel. If you can open someone up, you can touch into their heartstrings, and you can befriend them. You can get them laughing with you. They become more susceptible to influence. They're like, man, this Krishal's a pretty nice guy. Oh, maybe I'll listen to what he says, as opposed to, oh, he's a crazy conspiracist. He's always telling me how I'm a bad person because I want to force him to do this and that. They don't want to listen to you that way, do they? So part of this entire task is connecting with people, getting people to realize that, hey, you're not that different, which I love the fact that you do. You don't do this divide and conquer bullshit. It's like, black lives, white lives. I don't do any of that shit either. I try to have congruence. Yeah, absolutely. And realizing that this is a war of hearts, not so much an intellectual war, because most people, like you said, don't have the time to be digging up like 1,001 articles on what's going on.
Right, and then that's a belief system, isn't it, that we're dealing with, not a logically derived conclusion.
Exactly.
Right, that's a belief system.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with someone's belief systems,
yeah,
it doesn't matter how many logical arguments you've got anymore. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting there, and because you got on one side you got crazy conspiracy theorists, and we would both be aware of that the persecutorial stuff happening around that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, you got to stop calling these people zombies and sheep.
That's actually a salient point, man. No one wants to be called that. If you're calling someone that,
no one wants to be called that.
Yeah.
Right? They haven't got time, all right? They didn't have the time that you had. They didn't have the mental capacity that you had. They didn't have the emotional capacity that you had. And they've had a million other people before you call them a sheep. Be someone different. Be someone different. Be someone who tries to find some sort of common ground. Yeah?
I respect that. I respect where you're coming from, what you're doing, Chris, and I'm glad I had this conversation with you, brother. If you're ever down in Melbourne again, we got to link up, man. I love the last video we did. It got a lot of views, man, and I feel like people like your energy. I think we're a good dynamic, man. You hit people with the heartstrings and the logic as well. I try to do the same. And bro, kudos. I love what you're doing, what you're putting out there, and we need more activists, compassionate activists like yourself, doing the great work.
Thank you, and you too, and keep it up. Thank you from the heart, brother, because that's what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, man. Look, I feel like regardless of how I feel, I would just be doing this work. It's just like momentum to me. I've just been brought up in a way where I just feel compelled to do this kind of stuff. Like I know you're into the human rights, and I believe the animal rights as well. I saw that in the USB stuff that you gave me. I noticed that we have a lot of commonalities as far as the things that we're interested in. I just always had a strong passion for this kind of stuff, and I feel compelled to do it. But I also do it because I care.
Yeah, right. And I want to ask again, pro-government people, what do you think we're doing it for?
Do you think we like
I'm not getting paid. I'm
not wearing a mask. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think we like being ostracized? Yeah. Do you think we like exactly like this?
Motivating us.
It's a great question. Oh, it's like you just want attention. Do you realize how many the followers you lose from talking about this stuff. We're not popular doing this stuff. If I wanted to be popular, I just do music and do acting. I do this stuff knowing I'm going to the streets without a mask and people are going to get frustrated at me. I receive far more negativity than I receive positivity. The only benefit is if you draw like-minded people that you can have some like sanity with, but for the most part, this isn't something that is financially rewarding. It's just rewarding knowing that you were doing the right thing in your heart. Like I'm living my life according to my conscience.
Oh yeah. I definitely had it in my diary. Yeah. 2020 to 2021, get persecuted.
Yeah, because a lot of people aren't aware of this.
From previous friends who now hold completely different belief systems.
You've had death threats, right? Like you've actually had like a lot of blowback from this kind of stuff.
I've had the government. Yeah, I've had death threats.
Yeah,
I've had a few. I've been called a pig on the street. I've had I could go on. I really could. So it's not like we're doing this because we get to walk out and have everyone go, yay, you're without a mask. Like that's not our motivation, and no one's paying us, and no one, what do you what do you think is motivating us, huh? Like, are we just all actually just crazy? And I'm willing to accept the possibility, But I want to ask you then again, in my insanity, what is motivating us? What is driving this energy that we have to really communicate these things to
I would say courage, man. I think it takes a lot of courage to stand against the tribe. People, even if we were completely wrong and we went against the narrative, most people won't go against the narrative because they fear backlash. The fundamental testing point in every virtue is courage. It takes courage to be compassionate, to risk being hurt. It takes courage to stand against the norm, realizing that you're going to be ostracized. It takes courage to do anything that is truly valuable in this world. And granted, a lot of people prefer to assume that you're an idiot. The reality is, regardless of what your position is, if you're going against something that the majority are going against the majority, you're doing so because you have balls. Unless, of course, you like being attacked and you like being made out to look like you're a fool. Because look, I would much rather, to be honest, I'm quite happy people not agreeing with me on things. That's just been my entire life. I've always come from a very kind of esoteric mindset. So I call myself the esoteric noetic. But it would much rather to have congruence with people. I'd much rather like you have a conversation where it's not vehement, this angst, where people want to destroy you immediately for challenging their belief system. But the reason that I do what I do is because I'm not afraid to suffer the slings and arrows, of this outrageous.
Yeah, throw them at me, like I'm hardly a saint, and I'm hardly, and it's like, oh yeah, I've achieved perfection. Hang on, let me get my perfect shine on. None of us are perfect, and
God no. But that's I always think that it's not about, to me, it's. There's a distinction between believing that something is right and actually trying to live up to it and actually doing the right thing all the time. Like there are plenty of areas I'm not perfect in, but the thing is, I do believe that there are certain things that should not be done, and that's what I'm motivated by. There's some people that and people always throw stones at you, but yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to fight for what I believe is right. Like I'm always moving towards what I believe is right. And just because I'm not perfect all the time doesn't mean that I shouldn't strive towards that, as opposed to taking this attitude, well, you can't change anything. You're not perfect. Therefore, you should never strive towards any good. What kind of attitude is that, as Jesus Christ said, let the sinless cast the first stone or something like that. Yeah.
Because I'm imperfect and because I'm got my messy bits. So therefore, I shouldn't do what I believe is right. Hang on, that would mean that no one does what they believe is right.
Exactly.
And that's a very, very, very worst place than everyone just, than everyone just doing what they believe is right. And again, it comes back to that time in the future when everyone's going to have to look in a mirror, and what did you do and what didn't you do, and that's where the judgment is. It's not from me, and it's not from your friends, and it's not from your family. It's that moment in the mirror 5 years, 10 years from now, where you look back and you realize all the things you said, all the things you did, all the things you didn't do. And how are you going to feel then? Because that's what matters. Not my opinion, not the government's opinion, certainly not, some random in the streets opinion, your opinion of yourself. I invite everyone to judge themselves, and I'm one of my own harshest critiques, Then I hope then this, and again, I'm trying to find that common ground. I'm trying to say, I won't judge you. I'll let you do that. I worry about judging me, and let's work together on what we believe is right. And let's have a debate, let's engage. Let's find common ground. Let's find congruency. Let's move forward together. Let's figure out how we can cross these lines that have been drawn in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to. Sometimes I want to jump into the sandcastle and just kick all those lines down. Because there's a lot of them.
I like that. I always like to say you have to find common unity in order to have a community. We have to find common ground. And I think the fact that you always focus on that, like what is it about us that we can agree on? That's the best place to work from. Chris Edwards, my brother from another mother. We could talk for hours about this stuff. There's a lot of stuff on the USB that you gave me that I haven't even touched upon yet, man. I'm still getting through it. Amazing knowledge. I'd love to have you on here at another point, man. I love your approach. I love the fact that you were both honest about what's going on and you're always trying to find congruence. So, bro, love to have you on again. And thanks for coming on, brother. If people want to get in touch with you, I know you're kind of like incognito at the moment from social media because you have the popo on your ass or something like that. But do you want people to get in touch with you? I mean, do you have any social media that you'd like?
Look, I've got a Facebook account. I'm going to be setting some more online activity up soon. I'm going to start making more of a public sort of get into the whole public figure arena thing stuff.
Sure.
So yes, I haven't. Maybe I could hit you up for some advice on how to get all this sort of thing happening.
Got to get on Odyssey, also known as Library. Got to get on Parler. It's one of the more free speech sites at the moment. But bro, got to get on all of that stuff. It's all about decentralization in the 21st century, man. And bro, I think you're one of these people that needs to be sharing our content. I've checked out some of your Facebook stuff, man. You're posting amazing stuff. But brother, if you feel so inclined, hit me up and I'll recommend some links. Obviously, I'm going to post this up on, some of it on YouTube. I think it should be acceptable to some extent. I'm a little apprehensive because they're censoring everything now, but it's definitely going to be on Odyssey, Library, and I'll put all the links in this video, and I'll put your links down as well if you want to share that, brother.
Yeah, awesome, brother, awesome. I am. If you do want to support me, do you want? Can I plug it?
Yeah, plug in your absolutely business donations, whatever. It's all good.
Particularly beautiful pieces of nature on Facebook. Particularly beautiful pieces of nature. I love doing art with nature. It's just something that I do for time off when I'm not busy, trying to fuck up Emperor Palpatine's day.
Absolutely, man.
You know, like, fight the Darth.
We always make this analogy. It's like we are the Rebel Alliance, man. We are seeing a manifestation of all of these story arcs coming to fruition with the current situation. You know, this dark empire and casting this dream spell where everyone is just capitulating, and we're finally making this stance as the Rebel Alliance. But in regards to your work, brother, so you're an artist, as in like you paint, you sculpture. What is it that you're doing there?
So I do sculptures. I'm doing sculptures at the moment. Look, I've been a circus performer. I've been a DJ.
Wow.
I've been
circus performer.
Yeah, I
Just
did
the man of many talents.
I was an entertainer for nearly 10 years.
You have that vibe about you, like that Gandalf kind of like wizard, shooting fire out of your mouth and like casting spells, and you know, wise doesn't surprise me one bit, bro. But look, I'll put the links down, and people can check that out. And be sure to send me your links. Anything else you want people to check out. But brother, we've done almost 2 hours. I think this is a good.
Wow, that's huge. That's huge, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right, well let's wrap it up then.
Let's wrap it up.
And it's been great, brother.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for giving me the USB and reaching out. It's been a pleasure, brother. You're a scholar, a gentleman, and a wizard of extreme awesomeness.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Peace out. God bless.
What is liberty?
What the? Who says you can't build muscle on a vegan diet?
What's it like being a hottie in the vegan community? There are no political solutions, only technological ones.
The economics of the system don't allow multiple competing systems to survive.
Engineering, technology, these arts of humanity, they are magic.